I would go to class.
Besimcha Rabba. Okay, we're beginning a new section right now.
Can I record it?
With pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Put it here, beside the green juice.
You need to speak loudly. No.
Amen. Ah, it's good stuff. We're now going to speak about the fundamental core belief, concept, essence in Jewish belief that the prophecy of Moshe, of Moses, is different than all the other prophets. We spent a lot of time going through prophecy, and there are shiurim that we gave on how to achieve prophecy, and it's a work in progress. It's something that we're all working on. That being said, it's important to know that there will never be a prophet like Moshe. Moshe is the ultimate prophet, and we're going to describe today a little bit what makes him unique. Yes, Yosef.
If you had prophecy, would you tell anyone?
So, there were prophets that it was just prophecy for themselves. There were others that their prophecy was meant to be for others, to help other people, to be able to grow in their prophecy, to be able to grow either helping other prophets grow in their prophecy or helping somebody find their lost donkeys. Yeah, Arya.
Do we know anyone from within the Torah or Talmud that had prophecy but had to hide it from others?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. That being said, we want to achieve prophecy. And like we mentioned all the way in the beginning of these shiurim, prophecy never ceased. Now it did, but what I mean is something specific. Prophecy is a broadcast. Hashem is broadcasting that consciousness. That broadcast never stopped. The way we describe it is there Chinese folk music running through the air right now? Can you hear it? You're listening to it? Why don't you hear it? Well, the answer is just get out a shortwave radio and just tune the dial. All of a sudden, Mexican music, right? Just hold on, just move the dial a little bit. It's in the airwaves. We just don't have the antenna to pick up on it. But it's here, right? So too prophecy. God is broadcasting prophecy consciousness. We've just lost the receptors. We've calcified our pineal gland, if you will. And therefore, we have a hard time picking up on this consciousness. But the broadcast has not stopped. That's what I mean. Prophecy has not ceased. We have just ceased to be able to pick up on the broadcast. You hear that? So we are working on fine-tuning our receptors. The language of this is called the koyach hadimoyon, the power, the receptor sites of imaginative powers that are able to be sensitive enough to receive it. That's where the broadcast is picked up on. That's where we lock into the broadcast. Then we describe that broadcast is then translated through the koyach ha-seichel, which is the power of the intellect of the prophet. And then the prophet makes sense of the broadcast that he received. He makes sense of the images and the transmission and then puts it into words as is befitting of his intellectual, unique personality. We're going to see that's the regular experience of prophecy. The prophecy of Moses, however, has differences. So far, so good. Any questions?
Power of intellect called again?
Koach ha-seichel. Koach ha-seichel. Yes, Carlos.
Do you think that these the frequency I remember last class I was here we were talking about frequencies. Do you think the frequency of Hashem, the strength of it is different in certain places, or do you think that it's kind of a blanket throughout for all Jews?
That's a great question. God is broadcasting. In certain places, there's better reception.
The Kotel.
By the Kotel,
Well, I was gonna say, like,
in Yerushalayim.
the first time I touched the kotel, like, it was a couple years ago, and like, I can't like explain the feeling, and like, I feel like if I try to explain it or convey it, it sounds crazy to anyone that's not Jewish or hasn't been here, but like, it was a feeling that like I've never felt before, and I think my first time, like, I'll never feel that strong again, you know, but I felt it, and it's just interesting. I mean, it felt like chills like running through my body, you know, so like.
You picked up on the broadcast.
Yeah, exactly.
And different places you could pick up on different signals within the broadcast. Like in Tzfat, you could pick up on a certain signal. In Chevera, you pick up on a certain signal. In Chevera, you pick up on in Yerushalayim, you pick up on a certain signal. In general, in Eretz Yisrael, you pick up on a certain signal. There's discussion if a person can even achieve prophecy outside the land. Maybe if he became a prophet here, then he could continue it outside the land. There's discussion about this. That this is where the reception is very strong. Lahavdil, it's like how many bars? You know, okay, yeah, we're doing good. But this is a different type of reception. That's just an analogy. Maybe those receptions make it harder to receive the other reception.
Question, do you see a difference between prophets, Nevi'im, the Tanakh, Mekualim, and people who are mediums and have a connection as a sixth sense to I don't know if we call it another dimension, if we call it Allah, but do you see a difference between those three individuals? Or is it
prophecy, so it's a prophecy, full-blown prophecy. I think what you're describing is, what prophecy is levels of perfection. As a person perfects his character more and more. And there's qualifications. He has to be a happy person. There's no prophet that can be a sad person. But by sad, I mean depressed. Sadness and brokenheartedness is a very Jewish, healthy thing. Depression is completely off limits.
That's correct.
That's right. Nothing more whole than a broken heart. So, a person also has to be wise. He has to be kind. He has to be humble. The higher up a person goes, the more that he's refining himself to the broadcast. We lost certain abilities to refine ourselves as we went through the Yeridat Adorot. But, let's say you mentioned Mekubalim. Mekubalim, ideally, are very, very sensitive, perfected people, that they're picking up on a broadcast that we call a lower level called the Ruach HaKodesh. They're picking up on the broadcast, but on a lower. Then you mentioned another category of person, maybe intuitives.
a medium? Yeah,
How do we?
medium would be someone that, like, quote unquote, in a kosher way, because we can't speak with souls, but I think there's like some understanding that if the soul comes to you, that can speak with a soul who has left this world.
So, speaking to souls is a big discussion in the Torah. In general, speaking to the dead, it's a very big discussion. Generally, people are cautioned against it because you don't want to get to a place where a person's finding hope in that soul, as opposed to that hope comes from Hashem. However, we do see that when Kalev, Ben Yefuna, went, he was one of the Meraglim, and he came into the land, one of the spies, and he went to the Kivrei Avos, he went to Chevron, and he says, Avotai, he says, my forefathers, and he was addressing them. He wasn't davening to them, but he was asking them to be at what's called a Melitz Yosher. He was asking them to go and beseech Hashem, that Hashem protect me, me'atzis ha-meraglim. I don't want to fall prey to the meraglim. But he went to the Kivrei Avot and he addressed them. He spoke to their souls. So speaking to souls is a very sensitive topic. The idea of a person being intuitive, though, and intuiting things would be to the degree that they are a perfected person, and to the degree that they have refined themselves. If a person, though, is what they call sometimes in the world like an intuitive person, but they believe in avodah zarah, God forbid, even though they might be, they might have these shining eyes, and they might have these, crystals everywhere, and they might be able to tell you some interesting things, but if you see any signs of idol worship in their presence, they might receive information, but they might be getting it from the other side, God forbid. And therefore, if a person is getting information from the other side, it's called the sitra achra, the other side, the sitra achra can cut deals. Says, you give yourself to me, you devote yourself to certain unholy things, I'll give you some information. I know was tut sich in Himmel. I know what's going on up there. I could tell you a few things. And that's why, God forbid, you could see people who are into certain idol worshipping practices, have powers. But don't think, well, they have powers, it must be that they're coming from a holy place. We're cautioned very much against these things, because you never want to cut a deal with the devil, I'll tell you that much. Stay away, my friends. Just say no to drugs. Okay? Yeah, Yossel?
So, the idea was brought up of there being like a kosher medium. When I think of that, I think of...
Kosher medium of speaking to souls?
Kosher like medium, like someone who is able to like communicate with souls, yeah. I think of like a medium as either being like a charlatan or someone participating in like black magic. Is there such...
What do you mean, a medium?
Like someone that can communicate with the devil.
Medium is a term that you...
Maybe just word semantics. Medium?
Somewhere in between, like a medium.
Like a sixth sense that not everyone can speak with souls. I guess medium is that.
Well, hold on, wait a second. You're saying that they hear the words of the soul?
Yeah, medium.
That's what it's called in modern parlance, a medium?
Someone who's like a mediator, and it's
Like a mediator, I guess it comes.
You want to be very that you want to stay away from. No, that you don't want.
for you.
Well, I'm saying it's not good to go to court, but if a person has to go, it's good to have a lawyer, because he can articulate things probably better than you can in a court of law. So that would be a mediator, a medium. But when you're talking about somebody that says to you, well, just pay me some money and I'm going to go talk to these souls for you. So I would stay away from that. But if you tell me there's somebody who he is intuitive and he keeps halacha, and he knows you, he knows your family situation, and you bring a real life situation of these things are going on, I don't know whether to make this decision or this decision, and you speak all the intellectual points, the pros, the cons, and he could help you find clarity in your decision, and he's a holy person, that's a good idea.
What if the soul's coming to that medium? So what if there's souls, and that soul is coming and saying, some mother has a son, so there's, please tell my son X. Like that medium never called the soul, never went to, it's not practicing black magic, but since he has that sixth sense, he has and the soul comes to that person. Would that be considered kosher?
So I'd like to know who this person is and what his qualifications are. If he says that, your mother's soul came to me and told me to speak to you about certain things. So we learned in the beginning of the section of idol worship, where the Rambam said that those were the first types of false prophets. Was one of their claims were, I received a message from on high that told you guys to do so and so. And he starts describing things that he saw, shapes and images, and then says, and you should worship like this. Make sure to just make a couple bank transfers to my account as well. And besides the fact that he becomes the guru, he's now the head of the whole thing. So I would have a good sit down. I'd be happy to have a sit down with such a person if he's going around claiming that souls are coming to him and he's now bringing those messages to people. So go back to the third point we mentioned, which is there's two ways that information could come. Either it could come from holy sources, which means it could be he is getting information, but that information is damaging if it's coming from a dark source. Yeah.
So I was just sitting next to this girl in Israel, and I think I just overhear the conversation. She was saying how her in her dream things will come true. Like she'll know exactly what's about to happen, like in like the timing of everything. And then I asked someone next to me, and she was also a girl, and the same girl also confirmed that. And it seemed like every girl at the table had this ability to tell the future, and I was just blown away. I still am. I just don't know what to make of that. And it has to do with dreams and something about women that have this ability.
Women do have something what's called Bina Yisera, which is added intuition.
Okay.
Women do have that. It's an important thing to know, and it's important that women tap into that. And it's healthy for them. It's like a sixth sense. For example, like let's say a situation happens where someone comes to someone's house, and the guys, they have guests and stuff, and then one of the guests is like, "Can I spend the night here? It's going to be hard for me to go back." And so the guy's like, if he's a good husband, he'll say, "Let me ask my wife. Let's check it out. We live in this home together. Just make sure it's all good." And she says, I don't think so. So what is he thinking as a logical person? Why not? Like, what's wrong? He's a good guy, known him for a little while, I didn't do a background check, but I think he's good. And he's like, so tell me why not? And she says, I just have a feeling. Now, as a man, you're a fool if you don't listen to her. Because she's speaking a different language than you are. And she's intuiting something that's just... So we have to know that, and women should know that, and they should embrace that Bini Yisera, that added intuition, and that men can embrace the qualities that God gave men, and women can embrace the qualities that God gave them. It's the greatest gift, is to embrace that womanhood. And it may be something like that is happening here. Dreams can go both ways also. Dreams can both be something that do indicate. The Torah says that a dream is 1/60th of prophecy. It's like a hint of prophecy, but at the same time, dreams can come from an unholy place. If a person is exposing himself to certain things, then those dreams are not coming in a pure fashion, and they're really just the lures of the Yetzer Hara. If a person's been watching all sorts of seductive, unholy things, then as he goes into the dream time, he opened himself up while he was awake to certain seductions. And now in the dream time, they said, okay, now that you're already in, I've got you, now we could start communicating and talking, because now his guard is down even more. So dreams, you have to be careful. You have to kind of know the whole situation. Before I start believing a few people that I just met, and they're like predicting the future, I kind of want to know a little bit about just the background information, what their thoughts on halacha are, and then we'll go from there.
Just in this, right, but in this scenario, it wasn't like they were predicting the future. They just were sitting there and they would be like, this is what she told me, like I know she would know you were about to say those exact words, and then you did say them. And in her head, she's just playing it out before it's actually happening, because it happened in her dream last night, and it's that's telling the future, word for word of what actually is happening in the present moment.
So ask her if she buys and sells stocks, and see how well she does in that.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
The way you're explaining Bini Yisera, would you say that's kind of almost like a partial nevuah?
Yeah, dream. What are you saying, Bini Yisera?
The way you describe nevuah and the way you describe Bini Yisera kind of sounds like a little similar, where they're interpreting more things that...
Yeah, so nevuah has certain parameters where the prophet goes into full-blown... we're going to learn the difference of Moshe and the other prophets, but the prophet loses basically all bodily functions. He goes into a dream-like state. He can't initiate it except at night. Ruach HaKodesh, though, lower levels, can happen while awake, and they come through purity. And this Bini Yasera is, yes, it's tuning into something that women naturally have. It says that Sarah was a greater prophet than Avram. That women naturally have a certain intuition, and if they work on this, they could become great prophetesses. Yes, Bini Yasera is something along the lines that women have encoded in them the ability to pick up the broadcast, which is awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, Carlos?
Do you think that like there's a balance that has to be made? Like if a woman is too hyper aware of the fact that they have the better intuition, it can worsen the intuition because like.
Yeah, the more that there's ego, it
Right.
removes it.
Just
Yeah, it can't be like,
because-
I'm such an intuit. And
Or like, you know, if you like get certain, like for me, it's like when I have intuition and something happens that I think is gonna happen, like I'm always like, okay, like I had a feeling, whatever, like, you know, I moved past it, but it's like, if you start to think like, okay, well, I thought this was gonna happen and it happened, I thought this wasn't gonna happen and it didn't happen, and women are more inclined to have that, you know, natural intuition, once they get on a streak, it can kind of like lead to like, oh, like, you know.
so here's where there's an interesting dichotomy at work, which is the higher you go up in prophecy and intuition, you only get there by humility.
Right.
So using this model, if that intuition is leading me to feel like, look at me, what Ruach HaKodesh extraordinaire I am,
Right.
so then it, you know, it drops.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Yossel?
So I hear from a lot of women that they're spiritual but not religious, and like a lot of women, they're like
Spiritual but not religious.
they're into like tarot cards and crystals and like a lot of nonsense. But like, is that their intuition, like this like heightened? What was the term again?
Bini Yasera.
Being dragged to like the dark side, or like
Crystals are geschmack.
The crystals?
Yeah.
Crystals are fun.
but like
You can't put-
certain, like certain powers and energies.
You can't put any independent power into the crystal. The crystal has no power. It's only what Hashem designed, that these should be items that Hashem implanted in them, just like a medicine. That Hashem implanted in this medicine something that helps, so to implant it in certain energies, in certain crystals and the like. I think, yes, you could have something where if a woman, or a man also, is naturally spiritual, but he's not guided in a healthy way, then it becomes what's called avodah zarah. Because he's claiming like this is the spiritual path, but if it goes against the Shulchan Aruch, then he has turned that into idol worship. Okay? Let's just begin for 1 minute, literally, the difference of Moshe's prophecy and the others. Ma hefresh yesh bein nevuos Moshe l'shar kol hanevim. Number 1, kol hanevim b'chaloim oy be'mare. It's going to be 4 main differences. We'll talk about only one today. Every one of the prophets would see the vision, the broadcast, where? In a dream or a vision. In a dream. Remember, we described that the prophet would lose sense of his body, or he'd be sleeping. Moshe Rabbeinu misnabe v'hu er ve'oimed. Moshe Rabbeinu was awake and standing. Every other prophet had to be lying down. You know that? He lost control of his body. There's a discussion whether he lost control also in his sleep, or if he was sleeping, he could be kind of at peace in his sleep. Or even in his sleep, it was a convulsive experience. Remember, this is absolute, divine, infinite consciousness coming into a finite vessel. That's sort of like a, that's like trying to plug your iPhone into a nuclear reactor. It doesn't leave much of the iPhone left.
But so if he has infinite consciousness, is he even really sleeping? Is he even really dreaming, or is it like?
So the whole idea here is that the sleeping means is that when you guys are sleeping, you're losing sense of your finite self,
Right.
your finite consciousness. That's exactly what happens when you sleep, is that you're not aware of the finiteness. And the deeper you can go into the dream time, that's what you could lucid dream, you could...
Right.
You ever like do cool things in a lucid dream? You like jump up and you're like, I can literally fly. You're like, I'm not limited. We should be Zoicha Mamish to continue in the ways of the prophets that came before us. Im lav neviim heim, b'nei neviim heim. Like it says, even if we ourselves are not prophets, we are the children of prophets. And once again, prophecy should return to the world. Amen ve'amen. Have a wonderful day. Kol tuv.